Sure, sir. So, the start. Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the third and I think, am I still audible? Hello?
Yes. Please go
Okay.
ahead.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the third and last session of the three-day international webinar on advances in digital additive manufacturing conducted by the Department of Mechanical Engineering of MBIS, Kerala. As always, let's start with a silent prayer. Thank you, everyone. Now I'm extremely delighted to invite the mastermind behind all our amazing endeavors. Ladies and gentlemen, I hereby invite our beloved principal, Dr. Sojan Lal, to welcome the gathering. Over to you, sir.
Good morning to all of you. Our respected chief guest of day, Mr. Alex sir, and heads of departments, coordinators, faculty members, and all dear participants across the country and from abroad. It's really very nice to hear that we are come to the end of this advances in digital additive manufacturing. And we have a very eminent speaker today. It's nothing other than Mr. Alex sir, the general manager from the LPSC ISRO. And I really appreciate the mechanical engineering department for organizing such a very disruptive technologies. And over the last 2 days, we listened to these topics. And I'm sure that there is a lot of opportunities for the general public, research opportunities, projects. So all these related things, I'm sure that our students as well as faculty members are getting more knowledge about this. For today also, there will be an eminent person. Sir will be also speaking on these topics. And by virtue of doing all these webinars, we would expect that in MBITS as well as other participating institutions, you will be able to take home something where that will be useful for the mankind as well as for the future generation. Wishing you all the best and have a wonderful day. Thank you, and over to Ganesh.
Thank you, sir. Now, it's our honor to have with us today one of the sharpest brains in our country, working on one of our nation's most honorable and most celebrated projects, and for one of the most successful and prestigious organizations in the entire world. And okay, he obtained his BTech from College of Engineering Trivandrum, CET, in Mechanical Engineering in 1986 and joined LPSC in the same year. And launching his remarkable career in the in-house proto fabrication facility as the shop floor engineer, he still continues to guide its course. Initially, he was involved in the realization of control components. He was responsible for setting up a greenfield facility at the industry for the production of control components at the industry and piloted the contract for over 3 years. Some of the first industry-made components for launch vehicles and spacecrafts actually flew in this period. So you know how relevant it is. So he subsequently moved over to the cryogenic engine fabrication and delivered the cryogenic engine hardware, including the thrust chambers, the turbo pumps, the gas generators, and other supporting elements for qualification and subsequent flight of the fully indigenously developed CE20 cryogenic engine for the GSLV Mark III. And he has taken initiatives to set up an additive manufacturing facility at LPSC, ISRO, in Trivandrum, in the boot model with the participation of the industry. It's my pleasure to have with us today Mr. Alex A. from the Indian Space Research Organization to talk about 3D printing techniques for aerospace applications. Sir, we are extremely honored by your presence. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Respected Principal Sojan Lal, other faculty, and all those people who are hearing me incognito. Probably the COVID pandemic has made us think differently, act differently, and probably if you look at India, probably it's a very remarkable country. Even in this COVID pandemic, if you would see, India would have done more RT-PCR tests than all of Europe put together. India has done more tests than all of South Asia together. So you can see the type of drain it has had on the economy of the country. And at the same time, it's very, very important that we keep ourselves safe so that at least our minimal contribution to this drain is there. So thanks for the introduction there. And probably in office, that is what I am. Probably out of office, probably I am just a really simple man. And I hope my presentation is visible there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much. And definitely, as somebody was telling, it's a destructive technology. Probably, maybe I would say it is little disruptive. So how this 3D printing is applicable in the world scenario? So if I try to put a small video, if the video is visible, you can enjoy.
This is the story of a
visible?
girl on
Yes.
her way.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Who
It is
would
clear.
go past this factory day after day. As the sign painter painted, name after name, no two descriptions were ever the same. And inside the factory, what did she find? A brilliant invention, one of a kind. "3D printing magical parts to help the whole world. A magnificent find for one little girl. As she departed, her mind did sing the song of a factory that can make anything."
So that is it. So slowly this 3D printing is going to revolutionize the manufacturing, and instead of very specialized operations, you are going to have factories that can make anything. That was what the video about. Now, coming to the progress of the 20th century, I really do not know. I put a picture here. How many of you know who is this gentleman is? He's none other than Goddard. Then this is the first liquid engine ever made by mankind in 1926. Now, over a couple of decades, and if somebody can have a look at this, and if they can guess what this is, if they got the guess right, this is the F1 engine of the 1960s, which propelled mankind onto the moon. So you can see within a short span of around 34 to 40 years, this is mankind achieved all liquid engine to a huge, massive liquid rocket engine, you know, the size of say 7 human beings and another 3 humans tall. So these are the remarkable progress of the 20th century for mankind. Now coming to India, what happened? You know, ISRO was established in the year 1969. So then what happened? Up to 2017, if you see a picture here, probably not many will be able to identify what this is, but this is what it is. This is our first engine. This was our first liquid engine. This was made in 1969, 72. And let us see what has happened. Now, in 2016, we made our first fully indigenized cryogenic engine, the C20 engine, which delivers an amazing 20 tons of thrust. So from 200 kg all the way up to 20 tons. And it is this engine that propelled our Chandrayaan-2 all the way to the moon. And now, look at, these are some of our famous liquid engines. See, these are the host of liquid engines that we have. Starting from the left, we have the C20 engine, then we have the Vikas engine, then we have the CUS engine, which is the first cryogenic engine. And then the workhorse engine, there's a PS4 which flies on the PSLV, and you have all those satellite engines, which thrusters we call the LAM and AOCS thrusters. So you can see the C20 engine, which has got a 200 kilonewton thrust and all the way up to 10 Newton AOCS. And that is not the end of it. Look, we have all these thrusters. These are all rocket engines. And just look at that. Towards the right, you have 11 Newton thruster and you have a 1 Newton thruster. So all the way from kilonewtons, we have come all the way down to a Newton. And if somebody can guess what this engine is, I can give you 5 seconds to guess. If somebody has got it right, all the best. And then if I have tickled your imagination, look, this is what we call an electric thruster. So what is the thrust? 75 millinewton. So we started from 200 kilonewton. We are now at 75 millinewton. So host of engines, host of thrusters are there, developed by ISRO. And then the question is, why do you require so many rocket engines? Why do you require so many rocket engines? You, sir, has presented 3 slides full of rocket engines. Why do you require? Now, can anybody take this question? How many rocket engines in a PSLV? The question is, how many rocket engines in a PSLV? So you can start counting. Somebody will count 4, 10, 20. So computer G, the answer is 39. So one PSLV flies with 39 rocket engines, probably not the very big ones, including the small ones. So they are all rocket engines. So this is why we say there is an amazing scope for 3D printing in aerospace. And for the future, now you see, we are working on a 200-ton semi-cryogenic engine, and the one on the right is my dream as a fabricator. We are working on a locksmithing engine, and it's under design. And the mandate given to us, this engine will be designed for additive manufacturing. So probably, I do not know, at least some of you, the next generation who are listening to this, probably will finally be working on an additively manufactured rocket engine working here in ISRO. So this is our dream. Now coming to 3D printing. Yeah, from a concept of a 3D printing, I have put 2 figures here. What is there on the left? What is there on the right? I will tickle you for another 5 seconds. Yeah. Just a minute. Just a minute. Sorry, gentlemen. So probably I gave you a little bit more time. Now this is it. The first one on the left is the subtractive manufacturing. The first one on the right is the additive manufacturing. Left, yes, how do you make this idle? So you take a big piece of marble and then you have a sculpture, Da Vinci or somebody goes and sculpts chip by chip, it is removed and then it comes out as a marvelous sculpture. Whereas on the right, you see, that's a human body. So I would say human body is the ultimate of additive manufacturing. Just imagine how small you were when you were born, 2.7 kilos or 3 kilos, and look over a period of time, how you were built yourself up from inside. So I would like to say human body as the ultimate of additive manufacturing. And why do you say? And just look at the muscles. This is the same thing that additive manufacturing can do. That is, you can have topology optimized designs. If you want to have good biceps, okay, you work out on your biceps, you build up your biceps. If you want to have a six-pack, okay, you work out on your stomach abs and develop the muscles. This is the same thing that probably 3D printing can also do. Just look at the one on the left and one on the right. Yes, I would say that is topology optimized on the left, and on the right you have a failed additive bit. So here, what according to me, the 3D printing is a primitive concept, but a promise of the future. Now, why do I say a primitive concept? I'll just put a video. So if you can see this, I would say this is a 3D printing. Probably I think many of the new generations would not have seen this, but the older generation definitely they will say, Kayala, how do you build this? So you are building it layer by layer. Just look at the skill. Just look at the skill. So you build it layer by layer. So this layer by layer building, this is nothing but, according to me, this is nothing but additive manufacturing. But what do you say the promise of the future? Yeah, here comes the next video. The same thing, this is how you can 3D print or 3D print and build a house. This is a 3D printed building. So this is what is happening. This is why I would say it isn't a remote, it is a technology, it's an old technology, but then this is what is going to happen as a technology of the future. And this is the promise of the future. Now, the concept of 3D printing, probably many of the people would have already been, many of you would already be knowing, and probably the last two speakers would have gone through this. And my presentation would not be technology packed, but then a little bit of more interesting for the laymen and the students. And you know, the technology of 3D printing is you have a CAD model, you have an STL format, you slice it into thin layers, and then you print it layer by layer. So you melt and fuse layer by layer. So this is the concept of 3D printing. But then if you look at this, you can have, it's all very told in very simple language, 3D printing. So, but when you apply that to aerospace, it's something little different. It's not doing a hobby shop, not doing a hobby work. It's bit complicated. See, imagine that, suppose you are going all the way from here to Delhi. So probably you will take a taxi to the airport, catch a flight, go to Delhi and take another taxi to airport. Yes, that's a hobby job. But then just look at the American president coming to India. So you have the American president coming to India. So at least some of you know he has his Cadillac, the Cadillac one. So the car has to come from there. Okay, then from here, if he has to move from the Ahmedabad stadium, he has to move to the airport, then he requires a helicopter. So the helicopter has to come down. Okay, then from Ahmedabad, he wanted to fly over to Agra. His Air Force One doesn't go. So he had to bring his Boeing C-32. So all these things have to come in advance. So in a similar way, when it comes to aerospace, 3D model is typically an all-encompassing process model. So you will require a CAD model. You will require a good CAD model. Not only a model, you will require a good CAD processing files, processing hardware. You will require analysis. You will require topology optimization. You require working on CAD, etc., etc. Then you have a what do you call a 3D printing machine? Of course, 3D printing machine. Then comes your post-processing. Very, very important for aerospace, because as printed, the product will have a particular property. But then for us, what is important is we work on optimized designs. It is weight saving. At the same time, it will have the highest strength. So we have to convert this part 3D printed onto a part with a very stated, very high strength. So for which we require processing. It could be stress relieving, it can be hipping, it can be heat treatment, solutionizing, aging, etc., etc., and a host of things. And then you go for inspection. Yes, when it comes to aerospace, inspection is very, very important. It can be an X-ray, it can be a dye penetrant test, and on the higher end, you can go for a CT. And then finally, you go for a final part. So when applied to aerospace, it requires a little bit of a holistic thinking, 3D printing. So these are some of the benefits that we derive. So what I put in blues, I can do complex parts, okay? I can have it topologically optimized. That is, you put weight wherever you want strength, okay? So you put weight wherever you want strength. Then I will work on the physical properties, excellent physical properties. And I have got at present, I think, a reasonably good range of materials that can be worked on 3D printing. But then what are the limitations? The manufacturing costs are going to be high. And you have a limitation on the build size. And of course, existing designs may not always be suitable for 3D printing. So you might require a changeover from to design for 3D printing. So the most popular thing 3D printing is the DMLS or the SLM, you say, selective laser melting, or the direct metal laser sintering. All this comes under the powder bed fusion technology, wherein you lay out a powder layer by layer, then you fuse it layer by layer, and you put the next layer on top of that, and then again fuse it layer by layer. You fuse it. So this is how it goes. So just a video of that. So this is how it happens. So you have a computer which slices the image. You have put one layer. The layer of powder is added. There you are selectively melting it. Okay. You have a selective melting. The next layer, melt, layer, melt, the other layer. So you again melt, and finally you see you have a finished part like this. So this is the DMLS, or the powder bed fusion. And then for the larger part, we have something called the laser engineering net shape, the lens, what we call the lens, wherein you have a deposition head, which has got a laser head, and you have a powder dispensing nozzle. So the nozzles will dispense powder, and you have a laser beam coming in, and that it melts. And then the entire thing will be mounted on a gantry or a machine that manipulates your nozzle so that you get your part. So that is called laser engineered net shape. These can be used for much higher sizes. And then you have something called the electron beam additive manufacturing. Almost the same as lens. Only thing is that in the previous laser, you are using blown powder. Whereas here we will use wire. We are using wires as the raw material. And you have an electron beam which is coming and melting the wire. And then the same manipulation and of the machine, you have a different axis. Then what happens is you can build a part layer by layer. And the advantage of electron beam is over laser is that it operates under vacuum. So under vacuum, you don't have the challenges of what you say corrosion. Now, for any scientist or for any artist or for any human being for that matter, what is the advantage? The additive advantage is, one part and you have limitless possibilities. So what is it that you want? So this was the one in the middle. The one in the middle was my requirement. I wanted 4 holes and 2 holes on the fork. Then you can do it any way that you want. All the others, how many? 8 combinations or 8 different versions are there. So one part, you can have 8 different concepts. So this is the advantage. So you have one part, you have limitless possibilities. What is it? You want to have a good looking, you want to make it look good. Yes, you have a design. You want to make it robust. Yes, you have a design. You want to make it lightweight. Yes, the same thing, you can have a lightweight design. So this is the advantage of additive.
Fast.
The issues on fast.
High speed on. Safety key switch on. Safety key switch on. We have fire and command ready. Fire. Fire.
Gentlemen, if you are seeing this video, what is this? So this is the first additively manufactured rocket engine that has been fired by the NASA. You can see a rocket combustion chamber fully additively built and which has been fired at NASA. So this happened in 2018. So on May 2018, they printed this 3D printed thrust chamber. So they say the test duration went for around 25 seconds with 100% power, and the hardware still remains in a great shape. So what prompted NASA to go into 3D printing? So they have a goal, and their aim is to reduce time and cost. So all American products are expensive. probably if they want to compete in the market with the Chinese or the Indians, so they have to reduce the cost. So how do you reduce the cost? You have to reduce the time. So this is what they are looking at. Reduce the time and cost towards building a rocket engine. So this is what they did. You have this has got a sandwich construction. So all these rocket engines, most of the cryogenic rocket engine will have a sandwich construction. The inner core will be made of copper. This is what you see on the left side. Inner core will be made of copper. And you can see on the figure which I am pointing to, there are a lot of channels, coolant channels on that body. So the copper has got a very high and the heat has to be taken out. The heat has to be taken out. So that is taken out by coolant flowing through these coolant channels. So the copper gives you conductivity, permits you to take away heat. But then what is the minus point? The minus point is you don't have strength. So what is it that you want? You will like to have a jacket over it. So what they've done is they've put a nickel jacket over it. So this nickel jacket gets you the strength. So this is what you have, a combination of a copper alloy and a nickel being printed. So according to the information available, this copper liner was built by selective laser melting, that is a DMLS, and then the nickel layer was built by electron beam additive manufacturing. So you have a hybrid process coming up in 3D printing. You see this? So, and this work was done by 3 NASA centers. So there was one center working on the powder, there was another center working on the chamber, and another center working on the nickel jacket. So, and you see, there were around 200 intricate channels, and this whole chamber was built of around 8,255 layers of copper alloy. So then the question is the time taken. How much time did it take? What was the big advantage? So the time advantage, anybody can make a guess. So they say it was printed in 10 days and 18 hours. So ISRO are also making these double wall chambers the conventional way. For us, this takes minimum of around 6 months. So you have a copper sheet, then you form it, then you deep draw it, you cut all the channels, then you machine the edges, then you go for bracing and all that. It takes up approximately 6 months. So compared to the 6 months, you see the advantage that these people have is, of course, 10 days and 18 hours. So it is not that they suddenly just plugged in a printer and then started putting the stopwatch and in 10 days it came out. Definitely the developmental time would have been much higher. But then ultimately the result is they can print in 10 days and 18 hours. And now NASA is also working on another program called the RAMPT. So their idea is to build a whole thrust chamber. The whole thrust chamber they want to build with additive manufacturing. So you have bimetallic manifolds, then inside you have copper, then you have a composite overwrap. They're talking about a composite overwrap, 3D printing, composite 3D printing. And you have a free-form nozzle using blown powder, the laser technology. Using laser technology, you will be making the nozzle extension. So this is what they have in mind. And now in LPSC also, this is what we also have in mind for our LOX methane engine. We are also planning to have a double wall construction, which is the outer will be copper and the inner will be copper and the outer will be made of stainless steel with approximately 300 channels. So we will be avoiding all the brazing, and we are also aiming for a reduction in number of parts. Of course, this is just a dream now, but we have to work on this. And probably this is one challenge for at least some of the youngsters who are listening. A fully 3D printed rocket thrust chamber in India. And coming to Ariane, the Europeans and their Ariane. Okay, so they are also into 3D printing. So they are talking about an injector head. Normally an injector head. This is an injector head for the upper stage, the rocket engine. So now what do you have? In an injector element, in the conventional process, you will have around 8,000 copper holes which are drilled in copper sleeves. and they are all screwed onto 122 injector elements. So you have 8,000 holes. They are made of different number of parts, 122 injector elements. This is the conventional way of doing it. Now, what is their idea? By 3D printing, this entire thing with the injection nozzles, the base plates, the front plates, the manifold, etc., everything they want to print as one integrated component. And then they are also working on it. I think you can see the picture that they have already been successful. So what the advantage is, they say the total components is cut from 248 to 1. From 248 parts, this probably the figure on this right side, made of 248 parts, it has been reduced to 1. So normally, in a conventional process, it takes around 3 months. This thing takes around 3 months, casting and a lot of machining, 3 months. But then they have done this by 3D printing. So if somebody can imagine what is the time taken. Any guess? Yeah, here it is. It's just 35 hours. So from 3 months all the way down to 35 hours. So this is the progress that they are trying to look at. And LPSC also, for the, our aim is also for our LOX methane engine. We also are aiming to print this injector head as one integrated component. And definitely, ladies and gentlemen, it's not that you can just simply take out any design and print it as a component. These type of complicated parts have to be designed for 3D printing to be realized. So we have to work on design for 3D printing also. Now, the Ariane also, they are also working on a next generation rocket engine called the Prometheus. They want, it has a very low cost engine. They want a low cost engine. So they want it at least 10 times less than the present engine. This is what they are working on it. And the turbine, the turbo pump of this particular rocket engine, they are planning to 3D print it. And their aim is to reduce the number of parts from 100 to 2. So you just look at it. From 100, they want to reduce the number of parts to 2. So this is the advantage they are working on. And same, this is the challenge that we are also working on for the LOX methane engine, the same engine that I have been talking about. We are also working on a turbo pump that will work on the additive manufacturing route. We're giving us advantages of time and cost. Then again, Ariane. So you can see a huge nozzle. Just look at the nozzle as compared to the size of a human being sitting there. So these, what do you call, reinforcements on the nozzles, they are made by additive manufacturing by a laser wire process. So these reinforcements weighing around totally 50 kilos, okay? They were all printed onto a pre-built nozzle. So what has happened? So the total nozzle earlier used to be made of 1,000 parts. Now it is just made of 100. Means number of the parts count is less. Yes. What happens? Definitely the cost also comes down, and the spin-off is reduced production time. Coming to SpaceX. Now everybody knows SpaceX. Yes. They have been pioneers for many things. They are always in the news. So in 2014 itself, they flew a 3D printed part in one of their Merlin engines. And this is a Super Draco on the right. You can see a rocket engine that is that they have 3D printed. This goes on to the Dragon spacecraft, or at least 2 months back, they had the first successful flight of a spacecraft from SpaceX all the way to ISS, and it was repeated also last month. So these are the 3D printed engines for the launch escape system. So any manned mission, will have a launch escape system for the humans to escape the launch vehicle in times of a catastrophe. So what they have done is they have printed the entire Super Draco engine, 3D printed the Super Draco engine. Now you come to here, look at the Rutherford engine. This is another Rutherford engine, another rocket engine. So this is designed by a company in New Zealand and manufactured in the United States. So you have heard of electric cars, electric bikes, electric scooters, etc., etc. Now electric rockets, okay, probably not in the strictest sense. Normally in all rockets, if you have a pump, the pump has to be rotated. So to rotate a pump, we will have a turbine which is driven by hot gases. But what these gentlemen have done is, it's a small rocket engine, so they did away with the gas generator generating hot gases, and instead they put in a battery and a motor to drive the pump. So it works on an electric motor. So you can say, okay, space is also moving electric. So this particular engine was also largely printed by 3D printing. So you can see you have the combustion chamber, the injectors, pump, the main propellants, all these were 3D printed. And you can imagine, if you can just guess what is the time taken. See, gentlemen, this engine can be 3D printed in 3 days. So this is the type of reductions that these people are working on it. An entire 3D printing happening in 3 days. And the LPSC scenario, we also don't want to be left behind. Okay, you can say we are also trying to copy. Okay, no problem. We make a very honest and a sincere copy. We are also working on an electric pump for the LOX methane engine, which is going to be additively manufactured. Now coming to another company called Lockheed Martin. They make tanks, satellite tanks. Just look at the size of the tank, and you can compare it against the human silhouette. It's the diameter is around 1.16 meter, and you can see 1.5 human height. So these were also 3D printed. So it's a much bigger part. This is also 3D printed. You see, this was done by the laser additive manufacturing. I can put a video of that. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, sir. You're audible. Yeah.
So this is one thing problem with the net. You do not know whether you're audible, whether your people are responding, and all that. Okay, that is a challenge. Just look at how an electron beam additive manufacturing works. So you have an electron beam. The bright spot is the electron beam, and you have a wire. Probably it is hidden there. And you have a turntable which rotates all around, and material is deposited layer by layer. There you see the shape has almost come. Now the shape is recognizable. There it becomes bigger and bigger. So that is electron beam additive manufacturing with wire. So you can see how they're there. So what is there? This is what they're as fast at half the cost. So that's a multiple of 4. They want to do it 2 times faster and do it at half the cost. So you can see this whole titanium dome by 3D printing. They have reduced the timeline. So you can try to fill up the blanks here. They have reduced the timeline from 2 years to 3 months. So one satellite tank, which used to take around 3 years, what I am telling, from billet. You start from a billet, you convert it into a forging, machine it, EB weld and test and all that. You will take 2 years from material to a finished product, whereas in EBAM, you are reducing it all the way to 3 months. Just imagine the amount of reduction of work in process inventory. The work in process inventory is reduced to a large scale. So all these things are going to reduce the cost of any rocket engine. And you might say, this is going to be a challenge. Yeah. What is the benefit that we have? Now, the better, the lesser the cost, you will have more people coming in. You will have startups. You will have new people with lesser finances coming in and coming out with technologies, for telecommunication, weather forecasting, or whatever it is, at much cheaper prices for the common being. Today, if you would see, at least India, probably 80 to 90% of the Indians are not connected at all. So they are away from internet. So the country has to connect. Yes, we have to work on low-cost solutions. And we are also working on a on the 400 dia, a propellant tank by 3D printing. Now coming to, then there is a company called Relativity Space. It's again in America. They're talking about from raw material to flight in less than 60 days. This is what they are talking about. From raw material to flight in less than 60 days. Now, you have heard of SpaceX, Blue Origin and all that. We all consider them as pioneers, who work on cutting edge technologies. But there were two gentlemen who were complaining. They were working in SpaceX and Blue Origin. They're complaining that, okay, SpaceX and Blue Origin are not doing enough in 3D printing. So what did they do? They came out, okay, they started a company called Relativity Space. And what is their idea? Their idea is to print an entire launch vehicle. Just imagine an entire launch vehicle, not a turbopump part, not a thrust chamber, not a tank. They want to print the entire launch vehicle by 3D printing. And they are telling that this will be the cheapest on a per kilogram basis. So for that, what is it that they are doing? They are building a 3D printing machine as huge as this. You can see, compare it to the scale of a human being there. And it is not a crazy idea. They were able to raise a funding of up to $35 million. And just look at the 3D printed, their trial 3D printed rocket stage. This is what they're talking about. Print an entire stage by 3D printing. Now, gentlemen, this is a very famous photograph. Can anybody imagine what it is? Maybe for the elder generation is, they might might understand it faster. But then, yes, there is Neil Armstrong's footprint on the moon. Now, why is it that you have such a big impression? It's because the lunar dust, it measures 70 microns in diameter average. There is a thick layer of lunar dust, and the particle size is around only 70 micrometers, 70 microns. Does it give you an idea? A very small size of dust available. Now, this is the best raw material for 3D printing. You can consider building a lunar base with 3D printing. You have the lunar dust available, okay? Lunar dust available. You have you mix the dust with a binder and spray it. You have 3D printing machines working on it, okay? And then you have a binder salt that can be applied to it. And what is it? You can build an entire habitat. Now they are talking about 3D printers which can build around 2 meters per hour. So you can print an entire building in about a week. You can think of printing an entire building in about a week. So you want to have a settlement on the moon? Yes, you have the raw material readily available there. And then NASA has also worked on a challenge. There is a 3D printed habitat challenge. It's a $3.15 million competition to build technologies to have a habitat on moon or Mars or wherever it is. And what is the spin-off? How many of you know that Velcro, the Velcro that we always use to fasten things, was a spin-off of the man's moon mission, the Apollo mission? How many of us know? So similarly, you are going to have 3D printing in housing. It could be used for affordable housing on the earth. It can be used for affordable housing on the earth when this technology is developed. Now, we are also not too far behind at LPSC. So this is our additive manufacturing journey. So where we start at the top right, move around in a circle, technology presentation, over AM workshops of progress, printing of pilot progressor. See, all this is our pathway to progress. Yeah, all the way from technology presentation all the way to adaptation. Now, and this is our, what do you call, roadmap. This is our roadmap. So what we have identified is a DMLS process for parts up to 400 mm cube and an EBAM process for bigger tanks and sizes. So the benefits that we are looking for is we can make complex shapes, weight reduction, monolithic construction, that is reduce the number of parts, okay, faster production, and you can have design iteration. Suppose you're working on a LOX methane engine, you work on a prototype and then probably you would like to fine tune it. You would like to have the next prototype ready immediately. So 3D printing gives you that flexibility of design iteration and faster design to realization. And our overall goal is to replace at least 25% of the flying parts with 3D printing. And this is the technology of that we have thought of. We are talking about an industry participation for establishing a facility at LPSC on the BOOT model. So we are inviting an industry to set up a facility at our own place. They can own the facility, we will load them completely. So that is the BOOT model. That is a build, own, operate and transfer model. So facility will be set up and run by an industry. And after 3 years, the facility will be transferred to LPSC. So LPSC will provide all the civil infrastructure, and it will also give the work or completely load the facility during the initial 3 years during which time the industry is working on it. So now what is the idea of this? So there is a thinking that we are already a little behind time in adopting 3D printing technology. So if you start reinventing the wheel, you will take a longer time. So the idea is there are people who are already established, people who are experienced. Okay, you use their experience and do your parts, and then you slowly build up. You work with them and build up your expertise. And this also, and also the BOOT model, it also permits a lot of design iteration. It permits experimentation, and it gives us flexibility in operation, so that the parts can be printed on demand. Suppose if I want to give a part to be printed outside, we have all those procedures, commercial procedures. So we want to get out of it, have the facility here, and then you have the flexibility of parts, okay? And then definitely, you have the lesser financial burden and all that. So we have already tendered out, and the process is already on. There are a lot of people showing interest. A lot of people showing interest to set up a facility here in our campus and work with us. So we have told this is what the responsibility of the vendor. He will set up the facility here, and he will also give us consultancy in the process development. That is the data preparation, build strategy, parameter selection, etc. So we are riding piggyback. We are riding piggyback. We are riding on somebody who is already experienced. So these are I will not dwell too much on this. And then you have the AM quality pyramid. As I was explaining in one of my previous slides, the aerospace requirements are different for 3D printing. So we require physical property evaluation for each build. Then you require the chemical properties to be evaluated. You want the mechanical properties, metallurgical characteristics, then the product soundness. That is NDT. Then surface and dimensional quality. So all these forms our AM quality pyramid. So it's the quality itself is little complicated. And these are the typical parts that we have identified. So you can see a host of complicated parts that we have identified that could be 3D printed. And there are some or other parts that are highlighted here. These are some other parts. And these are, structural parts, rotating parts, and functional parts. All these wide combination of parts we have already identified. We have already identified for 3D printing, and some of the interface elements also. And we are also thinking about powder development for the future. For the future also, we are talking about powder development. So probably the future means, I think this is the challenge for some of the youngsters who are listening to this. So in a big way, we would like to go for 3D printing. It's not only just printing, go all the way back and develop powders also. And how does this attract us? Just look at the turbine parts. Just look at the blade. Just look at the blade profile. Okay, you have around 60 veins. 60 veins on this is I've selected a particular turbine part. Okay, and you have around 60 veins, and just it's on the right side. What you can see is a shrouded rotor. So you don't have access from the sides. So it is closed. This is a closed rotor. Okay, so you have access only from the top. So what we do is, normally this is done by EDM. This is what we do. This is done by EDM. Sorry, done by EDM. So you have the open veins. This is the open veins that you are seeing on the left-hand side. And you have the closed veins. These are the closed veins that you have on the right-hand side. And we do it by EDM. At least some of you will be knowing EDM. You have, that is called the electrode discharge machining. So you will require an electrode. Okay, you build the electrode, the shape of the vein onto the electrode, and then you erode it. And this is not eroded with one electrode, not eroded with one electrode. You have two electrodes that are eroding it from the top. Then you reverse the job, put it the other way around, and then you erode it from the other side to complete the profile. And gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen who are listening to this particular part takes us approximately 15 days in 3-shift operation. This one part alone takes us around 15 days in 3-shift operation. That is the EDM going around. And you know, this EDM removes only very little material at a time. Removes very, 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 very little material at a time. So the part comes out only after 15 days. So continuous. So you have continuously the machine works, and then what we now have is an IoT machine. So it's linked to the supervisor's mobile. So if the machine stops for any reason, he gets an alert at any time of the day. He goes and sets it up and resets and runs it again. Otherwise, you are not going to meet the schedule of even 15 days. So this is an apt, example to be 3D printed. And now, if you see from powder to part, and then all the way to properties. So you have a powder. So this is the challenge in aerospace. From metal powder, you print, then you get a part, then you have a thermal processing. Okay, it can be vacuum heat treatment, and it is required to modify the optimize the microstructure. Very, very, very important, so that we get the required properties. And these are the powder versus the process size. So if you are going for binder jetting, yeah, you require a powder of 20 micron size. Then for your direct metallizer, you can go up to 50 micron. Anything beyond that, 100 microns and above, you have to go for the electron beam. Melting. So this is the powder size with respect to each product. And anything above 100, then you go for the DED process. That is the laser deposition. And definitely for all these parts, it has to be hipped. Unless you hip it, that is the hot isostatic pressing. So you put the part into a furnace. We call it a hipping furnace, and you apply pressure, apply temperature, you apply pressure. All the pores will close down, and you have to deform the grains, and so that it closes down, and you get a very high strength. Then, what is the science? The science is this: You have the machine parameters, plus you heat treat, then only you will get the material properties. For example, the first micrograph you see, that is the micrograph as printed. You can very clearly see the rays. You can very clearly see the layers. It is a layer by layer, like a brick wall. Okay, it is built layer by layer. But then the disadvantage is this has got very poor strength, and you can talk about the slip planes and all that. So these properties, this type of microstructure has got very poor properties, and these by heat treatment, you have to convert it into a totally isotropic microstructure. So this is the science behind 3D printing when you apply it to aerospace manufacturing. And how is it different? You just look at the microstructure in casting. You are melting, heat treatment, and machining. This is what you get. This is the microstructure that you have. And in wrought product, that is, you melt, you cast it into an ingot, and then you forge. Then you forge it, okay, and then heat treat it and machine it. This is the microstructure that you have. Whereas by additive manufacturing, you melt it, or by powder or whatever it is, and heat treat. See, your microstructure is much more refined. So when compared to a forging or a casting, this additive manufacturing will give you a much better microstructure also. And just look at the impact of heat treatment. I was telling you about the heat treatment. As built, this is the heat treatment property. Okay, probably internal. Then this is vacuum heat treatment, vacuum stress relieving, the first one. You stress relieve in vacuum, you have a small refinement, you do again go to HIP or the hot isostatic pressing, you will close up all the pores, then you solution treat it, that is again another heat treatment process, and then you age it, another heat treatment process. So you have this microstructure which gives you best balance of properties. That is, best balance of properties, that is strength, not only strength, ductility. That's also very important. Glass is very strong, but it is not at all ductile, very poor ductility. What you require is strength combined with ductility. This is the requirement of any aerospace component. And these are the metals available for additive manufacturing. A host of materials are available, and the blue ones are suitable for the powder bed. Sorry, okay. So, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Now you're audible.
Okay. So these are the feed horns that flew in as early as 2017.
So the presentation is not yet visible. Again.
Is it visible now?
No, sir.
Not yet.
Yes or no?
Sir, I think you will have to share the screen again.
Okay.
Yeah. Currently the camera is all right, but the presentation is not up there.
Let me see. Is it visible?
Yes, sir, it's visible. It's
So
all right.
where am I?
Uh,
I
yeah.
am coming down. Yeah, there it is. So this is, am I visible now?
So you're visible and it's full screen. It's all right. It's correct.
Okay, thank you so much. So this is one of the part that we have printed. You can just look at this, made of stainless steel. It's a manifold assembly. You can see the complication. Normally this was built up of around 7 or 8 parts, 3D printed as one part. Okay. So we are now doing some pilot projects, 3D printing at our place. So we have 3D printed main pump fuel impeller, main fuel pump impeller. So the part that you are seeing on the right is actually 3D printed part. So the material is 17.4 pH. That's a precipitation hardened high strength stainless steel. So you have a layer thickness of 40 microns, which means this is built up of around 6,175 layers. So the time to print is around 150 hours. Okay. Operating medium is kerosene and operates at a temperature of around 340 K. And the pressure is very important, 8.3 to 415 bar, very high pressure, and runs at around 19,000 RPM. So earlier, these used to be cast or either made as two different pieces. Then you machine out all the veins. You on the left, you see the veins you see, very complicated vein profiles. Machine it out and weld. So it takes a long time. We have 3D printed it, 150 hours, continuous working. So 150 divided by 24. How much is it? 6 days, roughly 6 days. That's an amazing achievement. And then this is another impeller, again printed with aluminum alloy. Aluminum alloy. So don't get confused. The part in the middle is the aluminum alloy. And as I was telling, for characterization, along with the build, we will have to build coupons. So these are all the coupons built in different orientation. You have coupons built in the x-axis. Coupon will be built in the y-axis. Coupons will be built in the z-axis. Coupons also will be built at 45 degree. So you have to get the properties at all different orientations. And if you would see, just look at how they printed the impeller. It was not face down. It was not face down. You cannot print it face down because of the challenges in putting the supports for the wheel. So this is how it was welded. So this orientation, this is a skill. This is a technology. How do you orient an impeller? How do you orient a part with minimal supports? So this is how it was oriented. So the layer thickness is 30 micron. So which means more than 4,600 layers. And time to print is around 55 hours. So this works in kerosene medium at 328 degree K. So degree centigrade is, okay, 320 minus 273, say 50 degree centigrade. Okay. Operating pressure, you see, very high, 415 to 565 bar. Very high. And you have an RPM. The part runs at around 19,000 RPM. And this is yet another one. This is made of Inconel. So we've been choosing certain materials that could be printed, aluminum, steel, high nickel alloy. Inconel is high nickel alloy. So layer thickness of 40 micron and 2,850 layers. Okay. Time to print is again 160 hours. So here the temperature is very high, 740 K. And an operating pressure of 7.5 bar and an operating medium of steam. Suddenly you will think, hey, sir, how is it that you have gone back to steam engine era? What is this steam in a rocket engine? So gentlemen, you have a cryogenic engine is nothing but hydrogen and an oxygen. So 2H2, when it burns, when there is a combustion, 2H2 plus O2, 2H2O is nothing but water, which is steam. So the gas generator in the cryogenic engine generates superheated steam, and which drives the turbine. So the working media is steam for this LH2 exhaust diesel. And we are also planning to develop a PS4 tank. That's a huge tank. So what all examples that I had put previously, they would all go on the powder bed fusion. So, but we are now planning to do a tank, try to do and build a tank, probably by EBAM or Lens, so that we can make a huge tank. So the technology that we have chosen is the DED. So that is, you are depositing powder by spray or wire feeding, and melting by laser or electron beam. So, you know, you can print large sizes. And this is the total configuration. So you can see. And this is our goal, gentlemen. So we are planning to have an integral injector head for the LOX methane engine. That probably, this is our goal. So if you look here, sorry, I'm going at this part, the LH2 pump exhaust casing. I think this is the first part. We understand this is going to be the first part for the 3D printed part that is going to fly from liquid propulsion system center. So ladies and gentlemen, this is our goal. And I've come to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. And probably if I can I stop sharing? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, you can.
Am I visible? Can you see me?
Yes, sir, you're visible.
And I can show you the 3D printed part.
Okay. Yes, sir, we can see it. It's beautiful.
So that's a 3D printed part. You can see. Earlier, all these used to be, this used to be a sheet metal. Form it, make it in 2 parts, and then, weld it here. So you have one part here, one part here, one part here, another part here. Okay, this is again a machine part. So this we have 3D printed it by 3D printing. So one inlet and 2 outlets. I just no, sorry, more than that. There is an outlet here. There is another outlet here. I'll just turn it around. So that's one 3D printed part. And I will show you another one. Okay. Here it is. That is our impeller. All of around 4 kilos. I will show you the vanes inside. There's the vanes that you have. This is another view of the vanes. Okay, this is the 17.4 pH that I was talking about. And if I can show you one more thing. So this is our turbine rotor. You can see with all those vanes. Now this is actually machined, and all these vanes are done by EDM. So it takes approximately, as I told, 15 days for EDM. So one day we want to 3D print this and fly. And there's another challenge also. This is called the inducer. This is another part which can be 3D printed. I'll just safely keep it here. So, ladies and gentlemen, people who have been listening to this, I think I want you to be enthused to go into 3D printing, because it's going to be a technology of the future, and it's going to be a game changer, and it's going to find application everywhere. And you talk about your dental implants, and Kodamangalam, I think it's very near Kolancheri. You have a dental implant factory there. They make 3D printed dental implants. The work is very simple. What they do is, I don't know how much some of you might be knowing. You will have a clinic or a dental clinic here in Trivandrum. So what they do is, they will take the impression of the your teeth, whatever has to be replaced. They'll take an impression, normal impression. Then there are collection agents here in Trivandrum. They take it to their facility somewhere in Trivandrum, and they convert it into a CAD file. This mold is converted to a CAD file and then sent to the factory. So that the factory 3D prints it, and the next day morning, the implant comes here to Trivandrum. So that then implant goes into your mouth to restore your teeth. So this got a large application. You talk about jewelry. Tomorrow, Bhima and Jose Ilukas, they are going to 3D print jewelry. So a lot of areas where you have, where you can imagine where 3D printing can be applied. So with that, I just come to the end of my presentation. If there's anything that you want, a couple of questions to ask. Probably I'm not a big technologist, but then I will try to answer whatever is possible.
Thank you, sir. That was really informative. Now the audience can post the questions in the comments below, because as of now we can't unmute everybody. So if you have a question, you can post it in the comments and we will read out, and so I will be answering the questions. Sir, till we get questions, I have a question. Will 3D printing someday make some SSTO concepts and this engine concepts like this, aerospike engine and such things practically feasible on an economic way? Like,
yeah, I mean, you just look at relativity space. They're talking about printing an entire rocket engine. So, you know, the next generation, they have a lot of wild thinking. And the 3D printing is amenable to wild thinking. So definitely, yes, I think it's a big challenge to all you people, all the next generation. You know, I think, yes, it's definitely possible.
sure, sir. We are still waiting for the questions. So once we are more consistent with cryogenic technology, will it replace the hypergolic, UDMH and such engines like the Vigas engine? Will it be replaced in the near future? Will ISRO be switching to cryogenic and related propulsion systems, or even LOX and methane type of propulsion?
You see, as of now, the technology most suited is the LOX and the methane combination. So we are working on the LOX methane combination. It's not that cryogenic technology, I mean, sorry, you talked about the UDMH. Yes, because that is a polluting propellant. It's a polluting propellant. So someday or the other, we are aware that we have to replace that. So we are working on a LOX kerosene engine, and we are also working on LOX methane engine. But cryogenic technology will still be there because that gives us some advantage with respect to the weight and all that. But then again, coming to satellite technology, satellite thrusters. So that is another area where we are polluting the space. You know, by all experiments, we are polluting space, and including all our thrusters and all that. We are polluting space. Understood? So we are working on electric propulsion. So we are working on electric propulsion for that.
Like ionic thrusters and such, right? Thank you, sir. That clarifies my doubt. So now we have some questions. First one is from Raj Desai, and he's asking if ISRO will be working in collaboration with Skyroot.
Pardon?
Raj Desai is asking, will ISRO be working with Skyroot?
I think most of you would have heard of the reforms in the space sector. That is, we are going to have 3 verticals. You are going to have ISRO working on developing technologies. You are going to have a company. There's another vertical called InSpace. Okay, which will permit private entrepreneurs to use ISRO's facility. And then you are going to have another vertical called NSIL, which is going to actually do all the launching for the government of India or ISRO. So definitely Skyroot, if they approach through in space and they get the required permissions, definitely yes, a lot of permissions are required. Permissions are not with respect to bureaucracy. Permissions are with respect to safety. Permissions are with respect to pollution. Permissions are with respect to environment. And permissions are with respect to security. So with all those, if they can come through the in space, if they get all these clearances, yes, Skyroot can definitely work with it.
Thank you, sir. The next question might sound a little controversial, but Kritik from NIT Calicut is asking, what if anyone wants to make a CAD design of the ideas that you shared in this presentation? Maybe someone wants to design the part. So how can we get the dimensional details to proceed? Design details of all these parts.
Normally what we do is, for 3D printing, we require the CAD model. Okay, normal fabrication, it's enough that you give a drawing, a hard copy of a drawing. But definitely for 3D printing, we require the models to be shared. Definitely, when we work with industries, we share the models, but then we work with non-disclosure agreements. So if this gentleman from Calicut University, he wants to work something on 3D printing, we have something called a Respond program, wherein, if you go to our website, you will have an option for a Respond program, wherein the academia can collaborate with ISRO. So if you can work out a Respond program, sharing all these will not be an issue at all.
Thank you, sir. Now we have another question from Mr. Mohanaravu ji. So what are the difficulties or limitations with high-strength materials like titanium and its alloys and Inconel and maraging steels with 3D printing?
What are
the difficulties when it comes to 3D printing metals like titanium or Inconel or some maraging steels?
No, as such, there is no big challenge. As such, there is no big challenge. We can print easily. As such, there is no big challenge. But then you should always understand, for our requirements, all these have to be heat treated. So heat treating, if you want to do a hipping, all those are going to be, your post-processing is going to be the challenge, not 3D printing.
Yeah, that's right. Now we have a question from Mr. Abhishek. He's asking, what are the problems ISRO faces to adopt 3D printing machines? And he's also asking whether if we were to make a habitat on the moon, then will there be a collaboration of different space agencies? Like, what we have done with the International Space Station and such, I guess that's the point. But will we be collaborating with multiple space agencies if we were to build a habitat on the moon? Maybe it's a 3D printed habitat. That's what he's asking. It's from Mr. Abhishek.
Oh, I forgot the first part. The second part.
The first part is what are the challenges for ISRO to adopt 3D printing technology and the machinery, and what the challenges related to the machine?
Yeah. I mean, it's very simple. The biggest challenge for anything is the human mind, the human thinking. We are sometimes little stereotyped. Then you are moving out from a particular technology to another particular technology, which we call the disruptive technology. According to me, it's only the mind. But then definitely we are very open to all this, and definitely we are also working on 3D printing. There's a lot of thrust on 3D printing. So probably more or less we have removed that curtain. And coming to the habitat on the moon, probably little futuristic, probably I really do not know in what time frame these things will happen. So all those collaborations will depend on the geopolitical situations at that time. So probably it is too little early to speculate. So you can see ISS also, not everybody in the world is there, not everybody in the world is permitted there. So it all depends on the geopolitical situations existing at that point of time.
Like if there's going to be another Cold War, another space race, right?
It could be so many things. Suddenly the Chinese and the Americans were friends. Now suddenly they have a trade war. So you really do not know. The world evolves. Or you have another COVID coming, I don't know what will happen.
Yeah, we live in a world of chaos. So that was really helpful. And the first part was particularly inspiring. The only hurdle is actually the mindset, not the machinery. And thank you for that answer. Now we have a question from a student of third semester in MBA. So Abhijit K. Santosh is asking, if you could adopt 3D printing technology in defense, wouldn't it be good? And he's asking, can it be the innate nature of the defense in our country? This 3D printing, additive manufacturing based manufacturing culture in defense technology.
Now you should also understand when you are talking about defense, you should not think about the Indian Army or the Navy and the Air Force. Okay, the people who are working on developing technologies for defense are different. Probably something people like the DRDL, NAL, and all that. So they are also working on 3D printing technologies. If you talk about aircraft manufacturing will be done at HAL. They are also working on 3D printing. So, and I understand in the Air Force also for spare parts, they have a big challenge for the spare parts. I understand there are programs in the Air Force itself to run, to make and develop 3D printed spare parts for use in their aircraft. So things are happening in the defense also. Yes.
So defense is much more than the army, right? It's about all the tactical things. So
it depends.
again,
Yes. I mean, you cannot separate defense and aeronautical because aircrafts are part of aerospace.
Yeah.
Defense also they are doing 3D printing. Yes.
And we have a question from Rijo Paul, but we'll get to that. Before that, we have a question from the person who asked the previous question: what are the challenges of printing inconel, maraging steel, and titanium? The same person, Sri Mohan Rauji. So we have another question from him, and he's asking. No, he's actually saying that he and his team has been working on advanced cutting tool inserts. So can we go for designing and fabricating these tool inserts by 3D printing? So he's making cutting tool inserts, and can these tool inserts be someday manufactured by 3D printing technology? That's the same person who asked about the inconel and maraging steel. So he's
definitely possible. Definitely possible. But then the challenge is, what is the material with which you are going to make your cutting tool? Now, where will you get the powder for that? How will you make the powder for that? And then once your powder is got, I think tungsten carbide and all, as of now, I really do not know whether they are being 3D printed. But then another option is you can try and do binder jetting. So if you try and do binder jetting, it's some sort of powder metallurgy. So you go for binder jetting, and then probably that process, the existing tungsten carbide powders, etc. Possibly maybe you may be able to 3D print with as a cutting tool. So probably it's only a thinking. Probably one has to develop on that.
Sure, sir. Now we have a question from another student. So he's Rejoy Paul from second year engineering in MBA itself. So he's asking, will 3D printing pave way for a most dangerous world of some sort? Something like somehow dangerous. Will 3D printing technology somehow end up being dangerous in the near future?
It all depends on what the humans do. Today, if you would ask me whether mobile is useful or dangerous, now you tell me whether Facebook is useful or dangerous. You tell me whether WhatsApp is useful or dangerous. Okay, the rockets, is it useful or dangerous? Useful because you launch satellites. Dangerous because the same technology, dual use technology, can use it for missiles. So it's a question. Probably the generation of whoever has asked Mr. for him to decide. Definitely, yes, it could be dangerous. I understand how to 3D print a gun, available already on the YouTube and on the internet. So it all depends on how you use it. So a toothpick can, a toothbrush can be used as a tool as well as a weapon. That's my answer.
Yeah, it's again about the previous one, right? It's always about the mindset. So that has really been inspirational, and we got an exposure that we would never usually get. I mean, we even saw these parts in firsthand. You showed us everything. So we are really grateful for your valuable time. We know you're a busy man, and yeah, especially this one, right? We even got to see the rocket's parts. So that's really remarkable. So we would like to thank you for all this. And before I invite the coordinator, maybe a principal has something to say. Hello. Okay, so
Yes, I'm listening.
yeah, so we have come to the end of our session. So the success of any such initiative like this one has one. So any successful initiative like this of this scale relies heavily upon the coordinator. The time has come to meet the man whose tireless efforts and enthusiasm made this event possible. I couldn't be happier to welcome my teacher, the man, the myth, the legend, Professor Eldos Lomi, to express our gratitude on behalf of the entire MBITS family. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ganesh. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible and visible. You're good to go.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So we have reached the end of the beautiful session of international webinar on advances in digital additive manufacturing. Today, I, Eldos Lomi, take the opportunity to put my gratitude into words. First of all, I would like to thank Almighty God for making today's session of a great success. On behalf of Department of Mechanical Engineering and MBITS, I would like to extend my heartiest thanks to our keynote speaker, Mr. Alex A., GM, CSF MME Liquid Propulsion System Center, ISRO, for his presence in this session. Thank you, sir, for enlightening with us with your excellent presentation and words on 3D printing application in aerospace application. We were able to gain in-depth knowledge in this topic. It is very much informative for students and faculty members who participated in the session. You are an exemplary person, and we have a lot to learn from you. I'd also thank Dr. Ravi Kumar sir and Dr. C.P. Paul sir for their wonderful session on day 1 and day 2. Wholeheartedly, I must thank you, our principal, Mr. Dr. P. Sojanlal sir, for his support and guidance for organizing such an event. Thank you, sir, for assisting and encouraging all of us. Next, but not the least, I would like to thank our HOD, Mr. Nidish Eldo Baby, for his great trust on me coordinating this event. Thank you, sir. We have been fortunate enough to get the support of all the staff for making this webinar successful. Heartfelt congratulations to the organizing team members and committee members for your hard work, which has made this webinar a great event. Finally, I thank all of them who immediately participated to mark this webinar with success. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. And regards to all of you. Thank you.
Yeah. Just a word of thanks from my part also. Great appreciation for the perseverance shown by Mr. Eldos in organizing this, getting me around, helping me through the Zoom video sharing app. And also for all those youngsters who have joined, and probably after this session, I will feel younger, because talking about 3D printing, which is the future technology, it always makes you feel younger. And thanks for that. And have a great day. Let's hope we will get through this pandemic, and then we will be able to interact better. And a wonderful future ahead for all those students and the staff members who have been attending this. Thank you.
So thank you once again, sir, for enlightening with all these advanced technologies used for the space application. It was really a wonderful and informative session, and we are still looking forward for more and more opportunities, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Sojanlal sir. Now so everybody, please stay back and fill the feedback form. We have already posted the link in the comment section, so you can check it out. Or on Facebook, that's also in the comment section below. So please go check that out and fill the feedback form. And it's been a wonderful day. Thank you.
With all your permission, I am leaving.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.